Fine day today. Great. Excellent. So, we have discussed some of issues often entangled with the intellectual property license and general rules and descriptions about the essence of a consideration. So, in this class, we will further take some overview about, by illustrating some cases pertinent to past discussion. Actually, we have cases, what is so clear. Valentine, a creature video versus Pinkley, and also two cases involving license grant and limitations, mainly for the Cohen and we may have an access to other cases. However, I'm not sure we may complete all the cases in points and substantial aspects. So it might be brief. So I am actually interested in the development of the intellectual property discourse. To be honest, I'm a little experienced about this area of law, but I am more engaged in the international trade laws. But it often brings some of the technical issues, some involving extent of exposure to what is patentable. It's actually difficult to apprehend in normal mind with novelty. What is concept novelty? So it actually related with a great an esoteric preserve that the deserves an independent, a full-time commitment about the subject. However, I intended to rather get brief, partly because I'm also a little beginner about this, intellectual property laws. Yes. And of course, it is challenging to many social sectors, others, for the advancement of technologies, internet or online access. It often fundamentally restructure the basic framework of industry. You see, also it is interesting to get to know the story about in newspaper articles when high ranks of government officers have advanced patently his interest about labor, but he is a champion to favor the labor corporation. How to shape the internet market within the current jurisdiction would be one problem that the economic justice may respond with. You see, the concept is fairly intriguing and also get into more troubles if we face with the technological aspect. So online sites and social portals are actually the subject that the policymakers need to address. what guideline and standard would be imposed actually is for challenges. And also the social ethos or culture would diverge and may allow us to some of a ill consequence, as you see in cases of entertainers misconduct or internet gaming, or it's very frustrating to the conscientious citizens, as you see. So the kind of progress was actually compressed and developed in rather speedy ways, as you charted over the decade, you see. That means now the economy undertakes kind of a industrial progress about this pattern and basic assumption, what is e-technology is very principal factor to impact the society of the past decade. So we often see in the Davos Forum, have you been experienced to Davos Forum, which is economic forum, to discuss the standing problems, key issues of a world economy held in Swiss Zurich. So the subject is the way and preserve that the human public intervention operates to shape and structure. See, the public governance, I once had a chance to read the article wrote by Professor Mitterman, who is a distinguished professor in American University, by Washington, D.C. And the university is highly reputed in course of international relations. And he also served as distinguished professor. And made a point, which is very insightful, to chart the 2 decades, 2 or 3 decades, which begins with the neo-liberalization initiative. In his suggestion, indomitable Margaret Thatcher would perceive the chronic problems, often we see a kind of a ill consequence from a Keynesian welfare paradigm. So actually, laissez-faire economy and free market institution is actually difficult and may be understood over the wake of a historical evolution, you see. For example, in his viewpoint, the anti-laissez-faire system already burgeoned around the 1860s in the United States. So in its concept, we may have a point of in distinction between a laissez-faire economy and the modern form of a free market, you see. And that assertion also composed with the kind of a proposition often averted by many influential economists. For example, Mr. Friedman also elicited some of ingredients that should be maintained in sustaining the free market system. What is predictability? That often be considered one of the agenda we discuss in legal problems. So predictability is legal stability, a source of authority to make the laws vary their norms. So the economy and law may come into interplay to sustain the free market. So a free market would not stand if it lacks the kind of essences, including predictability, the kind of a liberal constitution, or others, transparency, consequences, pivotal to facilitate the international business. And the neoliberalization trend also keenly intertwined with globalization, which we ascribe the kind of dominant form of a transformation we witnessed in the last 2 decades. And in his assertion, we may see many insightful strands to keep monitoring the progress of a global capitalism. So in the first phase of neoliberalization, Prime Minister Mao forefront in his speech and ideas, which is very leading and insightful. There is nothing like society in the world. And we now face only with the individuals, friends, and family members. What does that mean? It actually is squeezing and quite challenging that the government may go into mass acting. It's actually burdensome to keep on a promise, Keynesian welfare. So actually competitiveness is a key theme to understand the neoliberalization and globalization. The context was also intermediating into Asian states, as you see in the financial crisis. And the author, Mr. Mann, actually served the visiting scholarship in University of Malaysia, and also lectured extensively over Asian universities and others. So his viewpoint is very insightful to concern the scope of a global state. In his words, for example, fatalism. Often we say fundamentally to ascribe the mid-Asian states. In his words, is transported fatalism. So that kind of a globalization may lead to some other awkward consequences, as you see in Zero Ground. Have you known the word Zero Ground? September 11th terrorism. It's very striking and a surprise. So the context of globalization may be countered by kind of a counteractive force. Public governance also will be concerned by the economic forum held in Davos, to be salient in a concept. And we have to send it to respond with the concept. And also, we now see some of efficient administration of WTO commitment. So free trade now be secured in very strong framework as we consider. However, the anti-globalization actually, in its viewpoint, prevented the progress of a free framework of investment in the global market. So we need to distinguish between the free ideas about goods and investment capital. It poses serious challenges to national policymakers. If we liberalize the capital market, so must be negotiated, a compromise, and kind of a careful attention. And actually, it is contested how much extent the capital market should be liberalized. The initiative about liberalization of capital market launched by the United States was frustrated by the kind of a counter-active response of other states. However, in its viewpoint, it's very interesting and insightful that we now are faced with no dualism between globalization and anti-globalization. So I found some of interesting elements. The Korean intellectuals may obtain a point to address the business and personal, as you see. Said organic intellectuals. How do you perceive? So in his concluding remarks, he doesn't see it desired or a more reasonable. He made no definite answer about kind of interpret. Rather, he may propose a public governance may be most important thing in this globalized age. And we also have some perspective about a globalization. What is the word globalization? Newly coined word to describe the trend about our neighborhood. We may get more global and also typically localized in strengths and others. So it's kind of a point to interact with the global force. And also, you see, in this university, we often champion the kind of concept to manage our lives and face out with the extreme force of circumstances. So his prediction is very straightforward, and I found in terms of some of autonomous aspect, autonomous element, we may espouse. So in his version, the organic intellectuals, now who plays in the national context, would not support the kind of return to the Keynesian welfare paradigm if he or she do not agree with the kind of a globalization commitment. So the globalization or neoliberalization may get into a compromise to make us down on the land to manage and subsist. However, the organic intellectuals may be key player and be the group to make a creative path for the specific nations and others. You see, for example, Gangnam left and others. How do you consider the group would envisage any kind of a recourse about Cajun welfare paradigm. They would be instant and may highly be autonomous to respond with the challenges posed. So that group may be pivotal to sustain the instruction of Korea and culture and passion, and responsible to develop national economy. For example, that is the example. I do not favor any political wings or other subscribers. So it is a matter of national politics. However, that also may be seen in the right-wing intellectuals, for example. So it is actually enlightening to find us organic. So it is a jumble of different influences, also which would be pressing in some cases. So the concept was once asserted by national leaders who may be criticized in some light, or in some slot we may have some undesired incident, for example, undemocratic military coup on us. So we may have some implication about the development of Japan. It is a period relation in the past. However, it now pursues the strong national identity and also the kind of concept has to be eclectic in cases, but may be reflexive to erect our national identity. And in that context, the concept of organic intellectual, I consider, is very practical to address our status. Sorry to have a long story about this article. And we now have some cases about intellectual property licensing. The first case, decided in Ninth Circuit, 1985, involves the interplay between the federal statute and the traditional common law rules. The U.S. Copyright Act actually allows the registration of licenses and transfer in the Copyright Office, and doing so gives the license important benefits. And this statute often preempts any contrary arrangement based on the traditional rules of common law and other. So in the mandatory provision of this act, the copyright licensing only would be made valid provided that it was entered in writing. So the kind of a statute of constellation was incorporated into the purpose of this act. So the first issue to be resolved in this case involves whether the contract is validly formed, and also the cause of action raised by Pickney, was defendant in this case, could be survived in the context of a preemption of federal statute. In this case, as you see, the defendant alleged a breach of contract, a tortious breach of contract, and also a fraud. Valenta Creature Video produced video programming for sale and distribution, Callan Pickney is the also best-selling book entitled Callanetics. And BKV offered to produce a home video based on Pickney's book. BKV alleges that the parties entered into an oral agreement whereby BKV was given the exclusive right to shop for a home video deal and to negotiate with major home video cassette manufacturers, distributors for the production and distribution of home video based upon the book. So, the fact pattern reveals the context of entering into the contract. And it was orally reached, a mutual agreement later be reduced into confirmation about the means of writing. And later, defendant, who was Pickney, refused to perform a part of the agreement. And you see a printout, the basis of claim, cause of action. And also, the former two strands could not stand since the federal statute effectively preempts common law operation in this case. However, the fraud claim could survive since it is very fundamental and basic and maybe weighed in terms of entire and total, you see, and total. So it is final point of destination that the laws need to rely on. So the court may favor to rescue this remedy in the context of a federal statute, U.S. Copyright Act. And this kind of approach also often be ascertained by a Korean authority jurisdiction. So, for example, general clause, what does it mean? Meaning, faith, abuse of private rights be strictly prohibited and pronounced very elementary in the first and second provision of the Korean Civil Code. So in court opinion, you see, BKV's final argument is that the district court improperly held that the Copyright Act preempted claim for fraud. We believe that the district court carried preemption too far in this instance. Two district courts have held the common law fraud is not preempted by 301 because the element of misrepresentation is present. In its complaint, a BKV does list the element of misrepresentation to distinguish this claim from one based on copyright. So the case finally formed in part and reversed in part. So in core logic and metaphor, you see some distinct flavor often be held by common law lawyers. So have you known the concept, the sanctification of statute? Actually, this area of a statute is new and emerging. So there will be no chances to be available of a refined cases of evolved over time. Now the doctrinal precedence has evolved over 2 decades, and it initiated by framing the multilateral trade agreement regime, which is a statutory on its basis. However, we now glorified with a case laws to guide more specifically about the injustice and others. So the concept is very enlightening when we have a comparative viewpoint between a common law and civil law tradition. You see. In this case, the higher authority, Ninth Circuit, is an appellate system of court. You see. Absent a precedent, the common law judges are responsible to research on its own initiative, and so there is some of a point of attention when the precedent which is pertinent to this court case is absent or unclear. You see. If the common law judges may apply the precedent of equal length, federal statute, and federal and state also be involved. Often the common law judges may find no difficulties in finding the cases deserving review and point to be distinguished. However, there would be chances about no absolute authority or binding nature of the precedent. In that case, they may consider the court opinion on equal, even in equivalence. So the state decisis rule is mandated in light of a court line of authority. So the precedent of higher court is actually binding in terms of dominant practice. So it is unusual to cite the precedents of courts on equivalence. The district court may have a conundrum since the statute is a recently cultivated area by legislature. And the higher court, the Ninth Circuit, also verified this point. And in its deliberation, the final case, two district courts have held the common law fraud is not preempted by 3001. So the court ruling in this case contravenes two other pillar codes, you see. So, and also in this case, rendered invalid, particularly by appellate court. So you will now be reminded in rule about case highlights slotted in the box, which is very insightful as I consider. The transfer of copyright ownership is not valid unless the instrument of transfer is in writing and signed by the owner. Transfer of copyright ownership is broadly defined to include granting of an exclusive license. And finally, certain claims, such as common law fraud, are not preempted by copyright law. And the next case, which is titled Morley Economic Incorporation vs. Medipart, was decided in 1992 in the Federal Circuit. This case involves a misuse of a patent right. See, the inscription of single use only was verified in case brief, as you see, and it is a matter of contention how the grant of license may circumscribe the scope of a license in activity, permissible scope activities or conduct. Actually, in this case, you also find some of important concept about inducement to infringe. So the infringer may be sued if found pertinent to the violation of a patent laws and all others. Also, the concept could expand to third parties who assist the license in the violation of patent license. So, on a case-by-case basis, this type of a cause of action may make effective remedy to redress the harms and loss to the interests of patent holders. Medipart in this case actually sent a patented device to Medipart. Malincrod was plaintiff in this case, and now alleged the violation of his patent right, sold his patent device to hospitals, which after initial use of devices sent them to Medipart for servicing that enable the hospital that itself infringed patent. So Medipart now will be accused to induce infringement of patent rights by sending them to the hospitals. Actually, the hospitals are very contagious in scale and influence to obliterate the patented interest. So for the plaintiff part, it is essential to rely on inducement to infringement claim. Then we now consider if the patent holder may grant the license by subjecting to kind of a limitations, very controversial, as you see. Often it is the point that whether the patent right may be transferred in this context. And later, as you see, it is quasi-property right in understanding and comprehension. So there is also the matter to assign or license concept that differ, and also kind of mediate of a system often be embedded in real property law in the United States may come into close a sensibility, as you see in the development of a series of transactions in line and others. Then we also can know the structure sustained in terms of real property. What elements enshrined in legal understanding about property rights, and how could it be separated, transferred, or assigned? In this case, grant of use may prohibit from any uncurved use of a licensee. That is one concept we need to consider. However, also the patent holder may impose a reasonable restrictions between the points of a justice element, it's a quasi-property, and may be separable in some level. However, inseparable must be disposed in wholesale terms. So, is it a very touristic use for any specific fashion or a extent? How to consider? The court held the Medipart's activities were permissible repair, not impermissible reconstruction of the patent apparatus. So granted, the single-use restriction could be valid. This lower court also saw it falls within the context of single use. It merely applied a permissible repair and never advanced to the extent of impermissible reconstruction. this point. And also, we believe the restrictions on use are judged in terms of their relation to the patentee's right to exclude from all or part of the patent grant, and where an anti-competitive effect is asserted. The rule of reason is the basis of determining the legality of the provision. So, as reiterated, I also remind you about the intervention of fair trade laws or statute, you see. So, the dealings may be slanted in terms of a competition concern. Yeah? So fair competition is often reclaimed and desired earnestly by many liberal firms and enterprises. Eh? So we consider if an anti-competitivity is serious to make it null and void about single restriction of use. So, in the court opinion, the court simply applied the rule of contract law. The sale may be conditioned. Private parties retain the freedom to contract concerning conditions of sale. The public criteria is whether mailing credits restriction is reasonably within the patent grant, or whether the patentee has ventured beyond the patent grant and into a behavior having an anti-competitive effect, not justifiable under the rule of reason. So two cases now exposed, kind of interplay between common law and patent laws. And often you see the court tend to have independent, a form independent basis between two preserve of laws. Eh? So the appellate court now points to the erroneous aspect of ruling of lower court. You see, the common law concept could be limited in some kind of a serious aspect. As you see in common law fraud, often most issues are favored to be resolved in, as distinct prejudice, you see, patent grant. So the point to investigate is whether the patentee has ventured beyond the patent grant. So the contractual arrangement may be bound in fair extent by a patent right framework and also the statute. So you now see in case highlights, license grant may restrict the licensee to a single patent use. The third party that provides a service that allows the licensee to avoid restrictions found in its patent grant is guilty of induced infringement. And finally, a patent owner has the right to exclude others from using its invention. Therefore, it has the right to place use restrictions in licensing patent unless the restrictions have an unreasonable anti-competitive effect. And in the case entitled Cohen versus Paramount Pictures Corporation, decided in 1988, Ninth Circuit, shows the scope of a grant clause. So it is interesting. You may know it's a very popular name in Hollywood enterprise. Paramount Pictures must be a largest enterprises engaged in film business and actors. And Paramount Pictures actually entered into contract with Cohen, who was the inventor an owner of the copyright in a musical composition entitled Merry Go Round. And in the contract terms, you see the scope of grant, as you see, and typically bore significant implications in this case, a television. So the musical composition is envisaged by both minds in the contract to be distributed through the means of television. In this case, Paramount, as you read through the fact, raised many revenues by employing some of video cassette manufacturer and produce a video cassette film to home to the use of a home. So television also is framed to be used in the home context often. So it may get similar in that point. However, the code has now a distinct stance between two terms and favor the interest of a copyright holder. The inventor of Cohen, in this case, the owner of copyright, merry-go-round, is interested. Actually, in this case, you see 2,725 video cassettes of film were sold, and gross, the Paramount received gross revenue of 69,024.26. In this case, the code relies on the attitude of a statute in its language and structure. As you see, the Copyright Act has sections to define the mode of use, exploiting the copyright holder. So in pages, you see in section 106 of Copyright Act is right to this copies or phone records of the copyrighted work to the public by sale or other transfer of ownership by rental, lease, or lending. So the conclusive slap will be found in the contract. How to interpret the contract terms, the language employed by the parties. However, the statute, the framework, would give a reference to make it a meaningful agreement between the parties. So this independent this provision of independent use about its mode, phone records, may leave the party to be unreserved about the use of a video cassette. So it needs to be made distinct between two use. Sorry, time is up now. I have to complete one other case.